You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. Welcome to the podcast. I've got on a pretty awesome guest here, Tracee Beebe. Tracee is a screenwriter, and today we are going to talk about writing and developing spec scripts. Tracee, thanks for being on with us.
Thank you so much. I'm excited about the conversation.
So we kind of go back a little while. You and I, we kind of met on the Facebooks and have been, involved in each other's posts for a while and became quite familiar. It's weird, but we actually ended up in a clubhouse room the other day, and I was like, God, I forgot how much she knows. She's so wise. And you are working on a really unique aspect of writing spec scripts. You've optioned them, you've sold them. So I think it's about time on this show we talk about specs. So
awesome.
Before we get into that, I know as an indie screenwriter, you've got a manager and you've made it to that point, which is amazing. So if we could get a little bit of your origin story and then how you got into the manager, and then we'll work into the spec scripts, that'd be great.
Well, I don't know how far back you want to go, but I have been writing for 11 years now. I'd started out life as a horse trainer. And that was my whole world for a long time. And then at a certain age that we don't need to go into, I did a hard pivot. And I'm like, I'm going to write screenplays. And so one thing led to another. And I wrote a not good screenplay because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I rewrote it. It took me a couple of years because I was learning as I went. And
right.
The good news about that is that years later, after it had been rewritten, and I'd written probably a dozen more screenplays since then, I actually did end up selling that script. And it's in development with an independent producer now. So, it's one of those rare things where that first script actually did find a home, but it not in its original iteration.
Of course, yeah.
So then, I had focused my early part of my career writing, heavy character pieces, very dramatic, character-driven stories, and I love putting characters in terrible situations so that they're forced to grow and learn, and find their way out of the bad situations. And I had a screenplay called 101 Ways to Survive the End of the World, and that was probably my fourth screenplay, fourth feature. And it actually found a home with a independent production company in LA, and that they went to bat for it pretty hard, but in the end couldn't find the packaging for it, unfortunately. So that and it was a shopping agreement with them, and so that shopping agreement finally curled up and died, unfortunately. But the relationship that came from that did not. And so the producer that was kind of really trying to get that one off the ground became a mentor and a really good friend of mine. And I said to him one day, okay, I'm ready to write the next thing. What do you think I should write? And he said, I want to see a Tracee Beebe character-driven horror thriller. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And he's take all of that stuff that you know about writing strong characters and character arcs and character driven, and put it into a really commercial, marketable, scary thing.
Right.
And I'm like, that's not me. I don't do that. I'm rainbows and butterflies. Like, but then 2016 came along, and the election year was horrible. And everybody I knew was just filled with rage, especially women.
Yeah.
And as I was myself, and I felt myself just ready to claw someone's eyes out. And so the horror side of Tracee came out. And
It had
The
to be
rainbows and
influenced out.
It has to be influenced out.
Yes.
The rainbows and butterflies got put on a shelf for a minute, and I wrote a really intense, character-driven shark script. I love Jaws.
Cool.
Jaws the movie influenced me as a child and growing up, and a lot of kind of my personal like mottos as far as be scared and do it anyway came from seeing Jaws at too young of an age. And so I thought, okay, I know Jaws, I know sharks, I know the water. Let's write something along those lines.
Okay.
And it kind of was one of those things that sort of wrote itself because I had all that emotion and passion behind it. And I sent it to that original producer that said that was my mentor. Just it was almost for feedback. Like it was the first person I sent it to after I had rewritten it a few times and, gotten some peer review on it. But it was the first like next level person that I was sending it to, and he picked it up. And so, and he was like, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This is exactly what you should have been writing all along. This is good. It's a script called Deepwater. He's a junior level producer. He's no longer with that company that optioned that original script, but has a lot of momentum behind him. And I still do feel like it's an extremely good fit. So part of his plan, this is the long story of how Tracee got a manager.
We're getting the origin story.
We're getting it's coming. I promise. I swear. So part of his plan for getting that script packaged, that spec script packaged, was to get me repped so that when he did start taking it to bigger companies and studios, he could say, and she's a repped writer.
Okay.
So this producer helped, he used his contacts to get me in front of some managers and agents so that I could have those meetings and then find the right fit. And I finally did.
Right.
It's with First Story Entertainment. And that was a brand new management company at the time. Since then has grown quite a bit and has a lot of great credits behind him. And I'm so grateful if it like for all of that.
Yes.
And that's why I had to go all the way back. All of that led to me getting this manager, and it has been the best thing for my career by far. And then that led to me getting on the Bloodlist, led to me getting a whole bunch of general meetings. I've done 2 water bottle tours, and then I've gotten to pitch on a bunch of projects out in LA. And now
you don't live in LA.
Thing. I do not. I've never lived in LA.
I love this.
I've built my entire career living in one small town or another, far, far away from the lights of La La Land.
And you found that initial producer through querying or through your network?
That initial producer was actually through a big pitch event back when we used to do like the Ink Tip. Pitch festivals and the Great American Pitch Fest. Yeah. I did for 2 seasons of that. So they would kind of almost go not back to back, but pretty close together.
Yeah.
I scrounged all of my pennies and went down there, and I would just pitch my off. Are we allowed to say that on your podcast?
Well, I mean, now we are.
I pitched really hard.
I'll bleep it out. It's okay.
Bleep it out. I pitched. I would go and I went to. I think I did 3. I did Great American Pitch Fest and Ink Tip Pitch Fest. And so if you don't know what those events are, it's basically like speed dating for screenwriters. And I would go into those rooms and I'd get in front of one of the things I'm really good at that has lent me well, even though I'm kind of an introvert. Right. And I love just sitting in my little cave. I'm good at reading other people. So I could catch when I was either lighting them up or turning them off. And when they would start to lose them, I'd pivot to a different project.
Wonderful.
And so I would pitch like one in the 5 minutes that I was pitching to one company or one entity, I'd pitch at least 3 or 4 projects. Yeah. And I had a 95% read request rate. So all of those led to future things. And
I mean, that's the original story. It's really impressive because pitch fests at one point became kind of predatory. So it's great that you were able to take advantage of a legit moment and really impress and wow those producers and to help guiding into a career. I mean, You did it right. You nailed the pitches. You put the effort in. It doesn't just happen by chance. You have to invest sweat equity. You have to get great at so many different aspects of the stuff. All right. Well, this is awesome. Thank you for that. Because I think a lot of people listening will want to know, like, one of the avenues that they can get a producer to believe in them and to eventually lead to a manager. And so that was a great avenue. So let's talk about specs. We've both optioned specs. We've got specs out there that are, getting funding and getting ready to break any moment. So I think this is awesome. Let's talk about what you think makes a great spec and then your approach to writing them.
Oh, that's such a great question. I think one of the things that's really important is to don't chase the market. Write your thing, write the thing that lights you up, because it's your passion that's going to turn up on the page. And that's the same way that when you're pitching it, you have to believe in it. You have to love it. It can't just be because this is going to make you money. So it's not just about the great spec. It's how does it stand out? And it's your heart and passion that makes it stand out. Number one.
I think not chasing the market is brilliant advice, because if you really think about it, if you're chasing the market, then you're writing a film that started development over 2 years ago, right? Because what you're watching nowadays is stuff that was developed and written and produced 2, 3, 4 years ago and is now finally getting to the market. So if you're writing that I don't know, mermaid film, and, because mermaids were popular last year, you're already 4 years behind, right?
Exactly.
I almost sometimes equate filmmaking to like the stock market. Like, where are we going? And if you can get ahead of that trend, then you're even better. But I think you're absolutely right. Write what you really love, what makes you interested in the project, not just writing for that book. It's absolutely spot on.
Exactly. Well, and that's why I wrote that shark script. That's why I wrote Deepwater, because it was the thing that I knew I could dive into. I apologize. Terrible pun.
Oh my God. Are we going into puns?
I heard it in my head as I was about to say it. I'm like, oh no, this one's going to hurt.
So that's a biting script. Is that what you're telling me?
Actually, it's funny because this, and you're going to cut this part out, but I just have to tell you.
Oh no, I'm going to leave it in now.
So often, anytime this script comes up in conversation, it is rife with puns. I don't know what it is about this one, but no matter who I'm talking to, either they'll make it and they'll not even intend to, and then we'll all laugh about it, or
awesome.
I'll say it and like catch myself. I don't know. There's something about it, especially Deepwater. We're all in Deepwater now, right? So, but that's why I wrote Deepwater, is because I had such a passion for shark movies and for being scared in the water, and I knew that how I feel. I love swimming. I love being in the water. I love being in the ocean. But I also know that every time I'm in the water, because Jaws, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a good chance I might not make it out alive. So it was easy for me to translate that onto the page because I had that heart and that passion for it. I don't know if your listeners are aware of what the Bloodlist is, but it's basically, it is a kind of a who's who of scripts that are making the rounds out in LA. And it's not a contest that you can enter. It's a sort of like an insider for studio execs in Hollywood, execs that are saying, hey, this is a script you should read. Yeah. And so that's how I got on the Bloodlist. People were enjoying the read so much that it got passed around. And the cool thing about being on that kind of a list is it gets in the trades. And so it was in Variety, and it was in Hollywood Reporter and those kinds of things. And so it got me a lot of attention, even more from that. But all because I wrote the thing that I knew I would want to watch.
Yep. That's awesome. And that says a lot. I mean, because that passion comes through. And then if you have the skill, if you've been doing this 11 years, you've developed the skill, and then you're going to write from that passion, you're going to make a script that's great. Now, when writing, do you ever consider a commercial marketability as a way to help make the script even more popular?
Absolutely. I think ignoring certain aspects of the market, especially when you're first starting to try to break in, is you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So, the first script that I wrote, that was so bad, I didn't know anything about being marketable. I wrote the story that I felt I needed to write, and that was important because it's what taught me to write. But it had horses, it had 27 different locations, it had kids, it had special effects, things were blowing up, so that wasn't marketable at all. So who's going to take something like that on from a brand new writer, right?
Of course.
One of the things I think is so important for all of us, doesn't matter what stage of the career you're at, when you are asking someone to buy your script or to buy into your script, you are asking them to take a huge risk.
Yeah.
Even if you're Eric Heiserer, you are asking them to invest millions of dollars on your story, and so you want to mitigate that risk for them.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I took into account when I was writing Deepwater was, okay, I want it to be contained, right? Contained is king. Right. Few locations, few characters. So, and I wanted to think outside the box. So this was before I landed on, hey, it should be a shark script. I wanted to make it, I was thinking, okay, contained thriller.
You're thinking about budget. You're thinking about how do I keep this budget down so that this is attractive to a producer who's going to consider throwing money at it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I kind of messed that up by bringing in the sharks and all the blood, but at least I started from a place of, keeping it marketable. There's a difference between chasing the market and being marketable. Yeah, I want to make sure that's clear, right?
No, that's true.
I think it's really important to, to definitely keep in mind those things. Like, again, when we're talking about mitigating their risk, part of your responsibility is, how can I make this attractive to them? And there's two things to that. Is it unique? Is it interesting? Is it intriguing? Is it familiar yet new?
Yeah.
Or new yet familiar, however you want to say that.
Right.
And on the other side of that, is it budget friendly? Is what I'm asking them to invest into this crazy idea that I created out of my head reasonable for where I'm at in my career? So contained is a big piece of that, I think.
I think that works a lot because a lot of producers like the familiar because it's a tried and true formula. Like, Jaws was a hit and it was a hit for a reason. So from my experience, producers like something familiar, but then like you said, if you can put a unique twist on it, like even something like, switching up the genre or doing something original with, the creature or the characters that wasn't thought of, that can bring in the audience and can bring in the producer. They go, oh, this is different. And they get a little excited about it. Yeah, I totally agree.
This podcast is brought to you by thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com, where you can find instructional books, videos, courses, and screenplays of Hollywood's biggest hits to download. As an added bonus, visit www.thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com to download The Guide for Every Screenwriter for free. Yes, free. Available exclusively at thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com. Now, back to our show.
So, keeping the budget down, making it unique, making it interesting. Do you try and figure out what the next big thing is?
No, it needs to be the thing that I want to watch.
That you want to watch.
The thing that I want to spend the next, however many months getting to know the characters and living in their world. Now, you can do that and find yourself writing, a World War II vampire movie that is never, that's $1 trillion budget or something like that. And that's probably not doing yourself any favors. So can you take the aspects of that you love and put it into something that's a little bit more marketable? I think the only time that I consider chasing the market or look for the trends is, what are things people not going to want to watch? What are things that producers are not interested in right now? So after Twilight, the whole Twilight saga came out.
Right.
Vampire movies were done. Nobody was going to make another vampire movie because everybody was sick of them. The market had been saturated. They made millions of dollars. Yay for them. We're done with that. So, we're probably like coming out of that.
Yes.
Right. But it's been how many years now since the Twilight Saga? It's been a bit. So
right
now you can start thinking about vampires. One thing that I think nobody wants to touch right now is, of course, a pandemic story.
Oh, come on. Yeah, in 20 years, our kids will be making pandemic movies, and we'll be sitting there going, well, I remember when you couldn't find toilet paper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think I try and look for what genre is going to be popular. Like, we came out of about 4 years of a lot of like horror stuff was prominent, right? And because if you look at like the overall feeling of people around you, everybody had a sense of terror. So a lot of horror was popular, but I think we're going to be going into more like comedy. I think we're going to be hitting a little bit more lighthearted. So I will consider that a little bit, but I'm not going to be like, I'm only writing comedies now. Like I just kind of wait a little bit, try and feel how things are going to go.
Well, that's a really good point. And I actually have a little bit of a story that I will share about that. And I think you're absolutely right in understanding kind of the atmosphere, right? Just like nobody wants to see a pandemic movie because we're freaking living that.
Right.
And so producers don't want to touch that right now. In 20 years or even maybe 10 years, they'll start to touch that. But right now it's sort of the age of, I think the thoughts are, we're looking for sort of Shirley Temple, right? We need a positive distraction from the darkness that we're living in, and that's why I think you're right. Comedy, we're seeing the kind of the return of the rom-coms are starting to come back finally.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to write a rom-com because my heart and skill set is not there. So I know what I'm good at. But this is my story. Apparently, it takes me a long time to get to my story, which does not bode well for my
it's almost
ability
like,
to tell a good screenplay.
It's almost like you're a storyteller.
Almost. But I'm spending too much time on the backstory. Maybe I work on that.
Let's cut in late and leave early.
Exactly. So when I was at the beginning of this year, kind of like, okay, what am I going to be doing this year? Where am I focusing? What am I going to be writing now? My manager said, one thing you want to stay away from are things that are truly dismal.
Right.
So like, horror there's always going to be a market for horror thriller. People just love that. But things that don't end with some positivity or some hope are probably out right now.
Right.
So those truly like dark,
like the ending of like a 7.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We don't want hopelessness right now.
Right. Well, I wonder why.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine.
Well, the other reason why horror thrillers, and this is for indie writers out there looking to write a spec, horror thrillers they can be very cheap to make. They can be very low budget. I mean, that's why if you see like Norwegian films, a lot of them are thrillers with a little bit of a horror because they can keep the budget real low. They can focus on character. They can have the ticking time clock behind a thriller. They can have a little bit of a horror jump scares. They can kind of weave all of this in there. So like coming in as a beginner writer, if this isn't a genre you're interested in and have that burning desire, then writing a horror thriller could be a good way to do it. Going into a niche as a spec is an option. What do you think?
I'm a big believer in branding yourself, because a manager needs to be able to take you into meetings and say, if you're looking for a blah, 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 I've got the writer for you.
Right.
It doesn't mean you can't write everything under the sun.
Right.
But get known for the one thing and then start to branch away from that. So I got known for well, I originally got known for writing horse stories, and that only carried me so far.
Right.
But now I've gotten known as character driven. Horror with heart is sort of my tagline.
Okay.
And that's now starting to branch out just a little bit into more action thrillers. So,
right.
Which is fun. And I'm enjoying that kind of taking the things that I've learned from writing character driven horse stories to writing character driven horror stories to writing character driven thriller. But it's still, I still branded myself, and it made a big difference. But to what you're saying about using that niche, using horror as a way to break in, the thing about that is that it translates across cultures in ways that a lot of other genres do not.
Comedy doesn't really translate well.
Doesn't really translate that well.
Yeah.
Which means then, of course, the calm part of rom-com also does not translate very well.
Right.
And even some of the dramas, the things that we in the US find dramatic and heavy might not translate very well overseas. So for all of those reasons, including the fact that a horror can be done so much more cheaply, and a lot of that is because they tend to be pretty contained, right? We're talking about a cabin in the woods with
Absolutely.
3 characters and a ghost. So that goes back to that part, and it's a great way to break in. I sometimes regret spending so many years of my life working on drama, but I do feel like that was part of my education.
Oh yeah.
I learned to write great characters. I learned to write character arcs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your brand is really more character, and then you can take that character and you can do it in horror with a heart, or you can do it in a hard drama. So I think it sounds like, from my interpretation, that you've mastered writing characters, and now you can take that and you can rebrand yourself any way you need to broaden your umbrella of getting work.
Right. And it really has helped. I mean, that's why I'm able to now take a meeting with a production company who they've got an idea, or they've read my stuff and they want to work with me. But my script, they liked the script, but it isn't necessarily exactly right for their company right now. But now I can sit down with them and say, okay, well, what is it that you do want? What can we work on? If you're looking for something with, has strong characters, I'm your girl. And then we can play with those stories. Why are you laughing at that?
I just like that. I'm your girl. Holler at your girl.
Then they know that they can trust me to bring them something that's going to be have a good story, good strong story, and good strong characters. And then it doesn't necessarily matter what the actual story is, because we'll find it together.
Exactly. I really like your approach with Specs now. So you're actually kind of approaching producers, you're approaching production companies, saying, hey, what are you looking for? And then how can we do this together? So you've created the network, you've got the reputation, they know you're writing, they know what you're good at. And now that kind of gives you a little bit more control over getting work, which I think is amazing, because so many people, they write the spec and then they kind of flail because they don't know where to go. They can't get any progress on it. And you've said, you know what, I'm going to brand myself as a writer. I'm going to create this reputation, and then I'm going to approach these people and say, hey, what can I do for you? Which I think is great. I definitely have a similar approach as well. It's all about what kind of value can I provide for you? And then I get work that way. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. And I want to hear a little bit more about it.
Well, there's nothing more frustrating than spending years, really, when you get down to it, with the rewrites and everything, on a script and never knowing if that's going to find a home or not. You're right. You're doing all the right things. And if you do it right, it may end up on someone's desk and it may get traction, but it might not. Like, it's pretty much a crapshoot. Right. And so my goal has always been to not my goal hasn't been to sell a script, although I'm excited about those when those happen.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I am very grateful for those moments. But my goal hasn't been to sell spec after spec after spec. My goal is to become a working writer, or is to be a working writer. My goal is to be hired to write someone else's thing. Because when I get hired to write someone else's thing, there's already a home for it. There's already money behind it, and there's already, pieces in place. So it's not just a blind script flying around out in Hollywood trying to find the desk to land on. It's working for a purpose.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the difference here between selling that script. This is a mentality issue. So you're talking about the difference between selling that script and looking at it as a golden ticket versus a career, right?
Yeah.
You have been building towards a career. I have been building towards a career, creating this career as a screenwriter, and finding success that way. And that really is a huge difference in mentality and a different way of approaching it.
Yeah, you're very right. And I think many writers, it is about selling even just this one script. They've got one story to tell, and it is their golden ticket, and all they want to do is sell that one script because they're so passionate and in love with that story that they know that it has to get told. And there's some beauty in that. I mean, yes, write the thing that lights you up, write the thing that you're passionate about. But for me personally, that was never the end game. The end game is to be a working writer.
Yep. And you're achieving it.
I am actually, and thank you for noticing. But you're right. It's been a lot of strategic planning. It's been a lot of again, like you said, it's not about this one thing. It's about building the career. Every relationship that I've worked towards, every project that I've written on, every choice that I've made, as far as even contests or whatever, has been about building that career.
Right.
And so now, having my manager, I've been with him now 2 years, and I can tell you that once I signed with him, it was like this big sigh of relief. It's like, okay, now I'm not doing this completely on my own anymore. I've got someone on my team. Hooray, let's go. And so he has really helped me. He says, what is your goal? What is it you want? And I said, I want a career. I want to be writing. I want to get hired to write their ideas. He said, okay, let's work towards that.
Love it.
So a lot of what we did last year was getting me those meetings, to build those relationships, so that then we went back to those relationships this year and said, okay, what is it you're looking for? What is the script that you want to get behind? What is the story that you're ready to start telling? And let's talk about how I can help you get that done.
Awesome.
And they're like, well, we don't have any development funds. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. I will write it on spec. Oh no, you're writing for free. No, I'm not writing for free. I'm developing towards something. There's a big difference. And then not only are we working on a project that I know then has a landing place, right? So it can be, it's very much, what am I trying to say? It's inspiring to me to know that the thing that I'm working on already has someone waiting for it. It's like, yes, okay, this is cool. And then in addition to that, I'm now furthering that relationship with this company or this producer, and they're talking to me about me to their friends.
Yep.
And because they know that I am someone they like to work with, they enjoy working with me. Yeah. I can interpret the things that they're wanting to I can interpret the stories that they're wanting to tell into a viable story onto the page, and they love that. And so that just leads to more and more of those kind of situations.
You're building the myth of Tracee Beebe.
The myth, the legend.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what it is. That's all about branding. It's all about getting out there and saying, this is who I am. This is what I can do. And by impressing, a producer or manager with your script, and yes, they will talk to somebody, they will sing your praises, because these guys and these girls, they see bad scripts, they know what a bad script looks like. So when they see a really good script, it sticks out, it makes you the exception to the rule, it makes you exemplary in their eyes. So when it comes to writing the script, I mean, you've got to have mastered this craft, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be having these meetings or these conversations 5 years ago or even 4 years ago.
Right.
I've spent all of these years not just writing script after script, but learning more and more about the craft.
Yep.
Reading a lot of scripts, talking to screenwriters that are much farther up the ladder than me, learning from them, building my tribe. I'm big on building my tribe and having these kinds of conversations, talking with other writers who understand story and like lighting each other up and like, here's what works, here's what doesn't work, here's where I got stuck. Okay, I don't want to get stuck there. What can we do so that we don't get stuck on that ourselves?
Yeah.
It is a never, like, this is my life. I had somebody ask me, what do you do for fun? And like, I honestly got stumped on that question.
That's funny.
Because I'm like, well, I'm a writer. I'm a screenwriter. This is what I do. I have fun playing with my characters. I have fun talking to other writers about writing. I have fun, and like this is my life. I eat, breathe, and sleep this industry.
Yeah. And you have to definitely become a student of the craft and never get that big head of, oh, I've mastered this, I know everything. No, I mean, we're constantly learning. And I want people to know that. I mean, I've written a book on the subject. That doesn't mean I'm done. I mean, I'm still reading more books. I'm still learning. I get to talk to amazing writers like yourself and filmmakers, and I get to kind of absorb all of this in. And I feel like the luckiest guy on the planet, because I get to sit here and just pick brains, and then just absorb all of these nuggets. One thing I do want to talk to you about before we go is attitude, because you have a great attitude. You're humble, and I can tell when you're fun to get along with, and we have a good time. And when you're working with producers and managers, you want to make sure that you have that attitude of it's about the project, right? It's not about my vision, and it's about how do I make your vision happen?
Right. And I know how hard that is for so many of us writers, right? Because most of us are introverts.
Yeah.
Most of us spend most of our time sitting behind our computer screen, living in our scripts. And many of us aren't necessarily great in a room, as they say, right? So I know how hard it is to feel like you can have these conversations with the gatekeepers, with the key holders. You're so passionate about writing and you're so passionate about your screenplay. And you believe that this one producer or this one director or this one rep that you're talking to is your golden ticket. If you could just convince him. And that's too much. Like, that's intimidating and terrifying. And there's no way you're going to come across in anything other than desperate. And when you come across as desperate, because that's truly how you're feeling in that moment.
Yeah.
When you come across as desperate, that turns that other person off. I'm going to get woo-woo for a minute. The energy of desperation does not feel good to the person across from you.
It doesn't paint you well as a writer. People want to work with someone that comes from a place of strength. But I don't mean arrogance. I mean,
Right.
confidence. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know the skill I have and I know the skill I can offer you. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean control, where you're overly controlling of the story and you can't you can't edit anything, you can't change anything. Like, this is how it has to be. Nobody wants to work with that guy either.
Nope.
They want somebody that is confident in their ability and their skill. And that shows once you have that.
That confidence in your ability comes across as a willingness to make changes.
Yeah.
If I am not confident in myself, then I am married to these words because I don't feel like I can make the changes without destroying this
Right.
one piece of wonderment that I have created for you to buy from me.
Exactly. I think a lot of the issue is when you write a script and you present it to a producer or a manager or someone of, quote, keys to the kingdom, and we'll come back to that, that they consider it the first draft. They don't consider that you've been working on this for 4 or 5 years. Doesn't
Right.
even cross their mind. What they see is they see a foundation, and then they're going to be interested in changing that into what
Mm-hmm.
they think it needs to be to fit their needs. You have to have that mindset. If you think I am presenting you this perfect piece of work, guess what? I mean, when Mank wrote Citizen Kane, he turned in a huge script that Orson Welles cut down and repaced together,
Mm-hmm.
and it still it won best screenplay. So, I mean, if he's getting rewritten,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get rewritten.
Probably. That's definitely going to happen. Yeah.
And
it is a development process. It
Yes.
is a collaboration. The script, and you're so right. And like, I love the way you just put that. It is the starting point. It is the first draft that you're now all going to work together to make
Yep.
even better. You're going to get notes from the junior exec. You're going to get notes from the main producer. You're going to get notes from the director, if you're lucky.
yeah,
And the only way that that's going to happen is by your showing your willingness and to do so, and your ease at which you can translate what the note behind the note.
if you're getting notes from a manager or a producer, that's a good sign. That means there's something that they like about it and they took the time out to tell you. But I also want to talk about the mentality, like you had mentioned, keys to the kingdom, because I've been thinking about this a lot, because I really try and go back to like when I first started and to get back in that mindset so that I can help other writers. And when you think someone has keys to the kingdom and this is my chance for a big break, if I can just impress this person, like you said, that is an overwhelming amount of pressure on yourself. And you are basically guaranteeing failure because you are putting so much pressure on yourself, and you have built this whole moment up on whoever this person is. And from their perspective, it's just another script.
Right.
And
then even hearing you say that, even all these years later, hearing you say it's just another script makes me like almost want to cry. It's not just another script.
I know.
I've put my blood, sweat, and tears into this. How dare you?
Yeah.
But it's so true. To them, it is. And it may be a great script. It may be something that they're super excited about, but I guarantee you it's not the only thing that they're super excited about.
Yeah, exactly. For them, it's like a Tuesday. So, it's just not
such a great way to put it.
It's just not a big deal for them. But for you, it is. You've spent years on it. You've put everything you have into it. And it probably is like a really great script, but it's not the right script for them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm famous for querying like over 1,000 people. And been told we're not interested, right? So I mean, I've been there. At one point, I think I queried everybody in LA. So I mean, it's just like you have to start to realize, like, okay, this script is a good calling card for who I am, of what I can do, and it's an invitation, right? Mm-hmm. And if that script gets optioned, well, that's amazing. But I would just use it as that calling card of this is what I can do. What can I do for you? And then creating that value. And I know I have said that to death, but I believe it.
I do too. And it goes back to, it's not about this sale.
Right.
It's about the career. It's about the long game. And when you look past this single sale, right? Because like that feels like that's the goal. here's my script, please buy it. Here's my script, here's why you should buy it.
Yeah.
And that's not the reality. Like, that's not how the game works, but that's what it feels like. That's what you think is supposed to happen. That's what you think you're trying to do.
Right.
But what we want to be doing is thinking about the long game.
Yes.
Here's an example of what I can do. And it's really good. I've worked really hard on learning how to do it. Here's an example of what I can do. What can I do for you?
Right.
So that we can make something together.
And you want to detach emotionally.
Oh, yes.
You want to detach emotionally.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
Right? Because you cannot light someone else up about your thing if you're not lit up about it yourself.
That's a fair point. Keep the passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to have all of your hopes and dreams lie on it.
Right. And I think what that comes down to is detach from the emotion of the outcome.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Very good point. So, and then you want to be able to make sure that you have the ability to take more work, because if it took you 5 years to write that script, right? And then you get brought on by a producer or a manager and they say, hey, I've got this gig for you. You're not going to get 5 years.
No,
that
is definitely true.
I mean, I get weeks. I get 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks tops. I don't know what your turnaround is. So that's first
but think
draft.
Back though to maybe year 2 of your career. If somebody had said, write me a screenplay in 6 weeks, you would have imploded, right? That was completely impossible.
It used to take me 8 hours to write one page. It would have to take like, okay, today I'm going to write page 39.
That's because you're writing fourth draft version of in that first draft, right? Like that's another episode, all of it. So
I just needed to get better. I mean,
right?
now I can crank out, up to like 20 pages a day, and we can really get in there and roll our sleeves up. But it was a skill I had to learn, right? It's
a muscle just like any other.
Exactly. And I can feel like when I need to sit down, like I have to write, like I need to work out today. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Like it starts to itch at you.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I recommend to newer writers or writers, even if you've been writing for a long time, but you tend to be fairly slow, is to find an external motivation to force you to write faster. So there's a couple of contests out there that are about writing a 5-page short script in 32 hours or whatever it is. And that contest isn't going to get you industry attention, right? But that is going to help you to start to develop that ability to write with abandonment, so that you can crank those pages out and really build up that skill.
Yeah. I believe in 48-hour film festivals are fun. If you want to talk about pressure, that'll help you. Writing every day at a set time every day and making it a habit, I think helps as well. And then as long as your external motivation is strong enough and you're disciplined, because it really is about sitting that butt in the seat and hitting those keys.
Always.
You will get there. Well, Tracee, I'm so glad to have you on. I think we covered some good stuff about spec scripts. Do you have any final tips for a writer creating a spec script before we go? Okay.
If you have the opportunity to write for someone else, and they're asking you to write on spec, don't automatically immediately go, no, I was always told never to write for free.
Right.
There's a difference. Again, there's a difference between quote unquote writing for free and developing something with someone that will lead to a paid work. And so don't be afraid of, especially if it is building the relationship, especially if it's leading to more opportunities, especially if it's, a project that you enjoy that you'd probably write on your own anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that I try to keep in mind is like, I'm gonna write. Just because I'm not being paid right now to write, some XYZ studio hasn't hired me today, doesn't mean that I'm going to go skateboarding. Doesn't mean that I'm going to go do something random. Instead, with my time, I'm going to write because I am a writer. So I might as well be writing for someone with the intention of it getting picked up purchased, etc.
I think it comes down to knowing what you're getting into, right? So if you're going into this, like I'm going into this specifically to create these connections and kind of help build my own myth, my own legend. And yes, I understand that it's deferred, and you understand that you're probably not going to get any money from that. If you're okay with it and you're going into with that specific notion, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you're getting taken advantage of as a writer on a project, that's a big problem. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example because I got brought into a gig, and they're like, "This is on deferred. This was earlier in my career. This was a deferred gig," and I was like, "Okay, well, I do want to work with this person, and I want to get some credits behind my name because I'm just starting out." And then, but then I said, "Well, do you have a crew?" "Oh yeah, we have a crew, cameraman, director. We have all, makeup." I said, "Really? You have all that?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "Are they paid?" "Yeah." "So you'll pay them, but you won't pay me, right?" And then they got real quiet. So if that is happening, I have a big problem with that. That's not right.
Absolutely.
So it comes down to the project. If it's a passion project and everybody is not getting paid, then yeah, of course, and then create that relationship.
There are times when doing someone's passion project, as long as it's part of your passion and you are, what you are getting for that is valuable. You're getting experience, you're getting time on set, you're getting a produced credit, those kinds of things. There's value in that. You are getting something in return, right? You're not just sacrificing, here's my script and you get nothing back.
Right.
But I also do want to, I'm not writing deferred when I'm doing these spec things that we've been talking about. Good. Because it won't go into production prior to me getting paid. Like that's the difference.
Yeah, that's smart. Very smart. So you're guaranteeing that you will see residuals or upfront pay, which is
upfront. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
My manager's not going to let me write if without some money changing hands.
Oh, of course. Well, Tracee, I think this was great. I really appreciate you coming on this show.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share in your social media where you can tag us at The Successful Screenwriter.